All right, so we are going to be getting started on 5.1, Color Pencil Color Theory. So this is an introduction to both how to use your color pencils and how to apply the color theory. So on this assignment, there are multiple parts to it, 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're just going to get started with number 1 and 2 today. In class, we're going to go ahead and draw these things together, but if you're not in class, you're going to do them at home. So you'll need to set up a 12-step color wheel. I just used a roll of tape to get that outer circle. And then I did draw another inner circle, and then I've labeled the colors here. I do want you to kind of cut off the center of each of these wedges so that the color doesn't extend all the way into the middle, because it's going to be easier for us to look for complementary colors a little bit later on. So color wheel, we have it labeled. So you're going to be using, if you're in class, you're going to be using a set of Prismacolor color pencils. If you're at home, you're just going to use the color pencils that you have. So for each set of these, there may or may not be each one of these labeled on your color pencil. So for instance, if we look at a Prismacolor and we look down here, this says crimson red. And what I'm really trying to get with a red is kind of that pure red that we know as kind of the Crayola red. So I am going to test my colors over here on the side. The other red that I have in this set is a poppy red. And as I look at that, I am kind of noticing that's more of a red orange. So I think I'm going to stick with this crimson red. Also, along the way, there may or may not be, I just said this, let's say an orange. So there is an actual orange with the Prismacolor set. So I'm good to use that. However, if I can't find a yellow orange, I'm either going to have to mix it or I'm going to have to find the color that is closest to it. Now with the Prismacolors, we always want to use a hand sharpener if we're in the classroom. The reason for that is that it will gum up or get a lot of wax into a regular electric sharpener. However, if you're at home and you have your own electric sharpener, go ahead and use it. Your Prismacolors are very soft, and in fact, these ones are called a soft core pencil. And they will break easily, so be careful on that. So it doesn't matter where you start, but each one of these is going to be a transition. So here's a little sneak peek at what that's going to look like. It is going to go from as opaque as you can make the color to almost transparent or white. And it doesn't matter if you start in the middle and go out or start at the outside and go in. So the idea with this, just like graphite pencils, is to use light layers, use circles. You want to stay inside your lines. And so as I start from the inside, I'm going to zoom in maybe a little bit more. Let's do that. Okay. So as I get started, I am using more of the pencil tip. You're going to find this a lot easier to draw without making pencil lines, but they will still happen. And then as I go out, it's going to get lighter and lighter and lighter, or more transparent, and until it's just very barely covering. We do want an even coverage. All right, so that's my first layer. It kind of just stops right here I call this a band. So that's something I'm going to want to work on the second layer. On the second layer, I'm going to move my pencil tip to be more up and down. And I'm going to apply just a little bit more pressure, but just like with graphite, we don't want to end up denting the paper. And I do want this to extend out pretty far so that it is a gradual fading, that it just doesn't go from dark and then quickly change to light. or in this case, it is opaque to mediumly opaque, kind of opaque to transparent. So we're going to try to get into the habit that it is okay to see the paper showing through, that if I want a color to be more transparent, it is more like I'm adding in white, but I'm not actually adding in a white color pencil at this point. I'm just letting the paper show through. So there is my first color. It is the red. So next I'm going to go and find either a red orange or a red violet. So there isn't really a red orange in the Prismacolor set, although I do think the poppy red is a good bridge between red and orange. If you don't have a set that has this many colors, you can always just layer red and orange on top of each other. So I'm actually going to show you how to do that with the red violet. So let's say I was going to mix to make red violet. Because I don't have that color in my color set, I am going to start first with a layer of red, and I've actually even made it lighter. And then I'm going to find a violet. So in this set, I do have just a violet. So I'm going to layer with violet. Now, as I layer and mix, I do want it, when I'm finished, to look like a completely blended color, as if I did use one color pencil. But in this case, I'm obviously using two. All right, so I'm going to keep going around the color wheel until I have all of my 12 colors. I have it as opaque as I can make it in the middle, and then transparent on the outside. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do some warm colors and cool colors. So as I look at the color wheel, if I were to divide it in half somewhere about here, or some people go here, all of these colors over here are considered warm colors. They remind us of things that are actually warm, like fire or the sun, so reds and oranges and yellows. If I look at the opposite side, then I'm going to get into the cool color area. So you're going to make 4 flat values, or 4 flat hues that are warm, and I want you to do them by mixing. So let's say I pick this pink, and then this, what is this called? A Parma violet. So to make this warm color, and you're maybe asking, why am I picking violet? Well, red violet can be considered a warm color, and pink is a version of red. So I'm going to put that on there. And again, I'm going to layer back and forth, and then I'm going to put my violet. Now, if I get to the point like right here, right now, if I were to stop, my violet is overpowering my pink, and it is more of a cool color. I want to get all the way up to the edge, and I want it to be an even mixture. So right now, I think you can see how there's some thicker areas and thinner areas of violet. So I'm going to want to try to fix those, and sometimes that takes some spot coloring. So I'm going to go in, and just like with graphite, I'm going to switch directions when I layer, so it's not always going to be up and down. So I'm going to make 4 new mixed colors that are warm. So I have to use at least 2 different color pencils. Then I'm going to make 4 new mixed cool colors. Then I want you to transition from red to orange, and red, yellow, yellow, orange, yellow to yellow, green. And how you're going to do this is, what I want you to do here is to maintain the same opacity. So I'm going to take my red, I'm going to take my crimson red, I'm going to take my orange. And at first, I am going to have fading opacity. So it's going to start out more opaque, which means solid, or I can't see through it. And I'm going to gradually fade, making a transition in the opacity till it's transparent. Then I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to do with my orange, and it's going to be more opaque. And then as I move to that overlapping area, I'm going to make it more transparent and more transparent and more transparent. All right. So right now, this is actually a pretty good transition, but the opacity is not the same throughout. It is more opaque here and here than it is in the middle. And this is a common problem that people have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch directions on my second layer. I am going to build this up to be more opaque. As I make this color more opaque, I am making it more intense. But I want that overlapped area in the middle to fade. So I'm going to work a little bit more in there also. So notice I switched directions. There should be this area in the middle where the orange and the red overlap. That's happening. However, it is still lighter or more transparent in the middle than it is out here and here. So I am going to, I usually like to work with my lighter color. We're going to start talking about value a lot more, which is lighter, which is darker. And I'm going to carry that orange over. Now, I don't know if you can tell this, you probably can. I have these little white lines in here. And what happened is that on the page and on top of this, I pressed really hard and I incised lines. Now you can get rid of those if you get up on your pencil point and get into that indentation. Okay. All right. So I am not done on this transition until all areas are the same opacity. And I'm going to write that because I've already been saying it a lot. Opacity. The opacity is how opaque or transparent the color is. All right. So I'm going to make this as opaque as I can possibly make it over here. This looks like about 3 layers. And I am increasing my pressure as I go. I'm still not going to push it down so hard to indent the paper. And then in the middle, I can still tell that there is some paper showing through, which means it's transparent. So I'm going to have to add a little bit more of my orange. So as I make these transitions from one color to another color, I am making sure the opacity is the same throughout. So when I'm finished with this, and I'm not quite finished with this, when I am finished, then it's going to be the same opacity throughout. It's not going to be lighter here in the middle where it overlapped. And the color is going to gradually fade or change from red to orange. Getting all the way up to the edges, making sure I have good craftsmanship. I'm trying to avoid those pencil lines, but I seem to be a little heavy-handed today, which I guess, since this is a practice, that's okay. So getting it built up and opaque. And then the color is fading, but the opacity is the same throughout. Then you're going to do that down here with orange, orange, yellow to over to yellow, green. So you're going to, those overlapping areas are going to be less. They're not going to be as big of an area. All right, that's the first two steps. We will continue with the next three steps.